The little girl left her lunch for a hungry stray dog. The next morning, a miracle appeared on her doorstep. The wind carried the scent of dry leaves and sharpened pencils as Lily stepped into the schoolyard, lunchbox clutched tightly in both hands. It was a cool autumn afternoon, the sun hanging low behind a line of trees that bordered the chain-link fence separating the playground from the woods beyond. Most of the kids clustered around picnic tables or chased each other across the field, but Lily walked quietly to her usual spot, a worn patch of grass near the fence where the shade from a tall oak made the world feel a little smaller, a little more still. She sat cross-legged and opened her lunchbox. Inside, a peanut butter and honey sandwich, a red apple, and a small thermos of soup her mom had packed that morning. She laid everything out neatly on her napkin and took a slow, thoughtful bite. Her gaze drifted toward the woods. That was when she saw him. A dog, thin with matted fur the color of rusted copper, stood just outside the fence, half hidden in the underbrush. His ribs pressed against his sides like someone had forgotten to feed him for days. His ears were torn slightly at the tips. He looked like he hadn't belonged anywhere for a very long time, but it was his eyes that held Lily still. Not fierce, not afraid, just tired, hungry, hopeful. She froze, sandwich in hand, staring. The dog did not move. He watched her with a kind of polite patience, as if to say, "I won't come closer, I promise. I just want to look." Lily looked down at her sandwich, then back at him. Slowly, carefully, she tore it in half and reached forward, pushing one piece through the gap beneath the fence. The dog didn't move at first. Then, with cautious steps, he crept forward, sniffed the bread, and gently took it in his teeth. He backed away into the brush, sat down, and began to eat, never taking his eyes off Lily. When he finished, he stood. Their eyes met again. Then he turned and disappeared into the trees. Lily blinked, her fingers still curled around the remaining half of her sandwich. Her stomach grumbled, but something warmer than hunger had begun to bloom inside her chest. The next day, Lily packed an extra slice of bread. She brought a plastic cup filled with water and tucked a soft, faded handkerchief into her bag. She returned to the same place by the fence and waited. Sure enough, the dog came back. This time he came a little closer. He sniffed the water first, then ate. When he was done, Lily gently placed the handkerchief near the fence. "You must have been someone's once," she whispered, her voice barely louder than the rustling leaves. "I hope you feel like you belong again." The dog tilted his head, almost like he was considering her words. Then, just as silently, he disappeared. But something lingered, something invisible, something sacred. A bond had formed across that fence, not of commands or leashes, but of trust and of a sandwich shared on an autumn afternoon. The days passed gently, each one folding into the next, like pages in a story only Lily and the dog could read. Every afternoon, just as the lunch bell rang, she walked straight to the fence, and every afternoon he was there, waiting. He came from the trees silently, stepping forward only when he was sure it was her. Each day he edged a little closer. At first he kept his distance, cautiously accepting food and water. Then one day, as she knelt by the fence, he approached with a hesitant wag of his tail. "You came back," Lily whispered. The dog stopped just inches away. His tail swayed gently again. She noticed then the reddish tint in his fur, like rust along the edges of old treasure. "I'll call you Rusty," she decided softly. From that day on, the name stuck. Rusty never barked, never begged. He sat politely, watching her, with eyes that seemed older than his body. Sometimes he made a low, rumbling sound in his chest, not a growl, but something like a purr. A greeting only Lily seemed to understand. She began bringing small bits of chicken or boiled eggs, saved from dinner. Rusty always waited patiently as she laid them on a clean napkin. He drank from the plastic cup she refilled each morning and would rest his chin on the fence slat while she spoke softly to him about school or books or the dream she had about flying. One afternoon, as the sky stretched wide and golden, Lily noticed something. Rusty was limping. He favored his front paw, and a dark smear stained the fur above his ankle. "Oh no," she gasped, kneeling quickly. Rusty sat, head low, but trusting. Lily pulled out the soft cloth she always carried and dabbed gently at the wound. It wasn't deep, but it looked sore. She tied one of her cloth wristbands, faded blue with tiny stars, loosely around his leg. "There," she whispered, smoothing the fur. "Not perfect, but better." That night her mother asked why her coat sleeves were dirty again. "What are you doing behind that fence all the time?" Lily paused before answering. "I'm helping a soul find his way home," she said softly. Her mother stared for a moment, then nodded slowly, and said nothing more. But not every day is gentle. One Thursday, heavy gray clouds rolled in. By lunchtime, the wind had picked up. Lily tucked her lunch under her arm and ran to the fence, shielding her head from the rain. The clearing was empty. She waited, kneeling by the fence, the drizzle soaking her jeans. Minutes passed. She left the sandwich, the water, and a dry towel wrapped in a plastic bag. Still, Rusty did not come. The next day, nothing. And the next. Still nothing. Each afternoon grew heavier. She scanned every shadow in the woods, every rustle in the trees. She whispered his name into the wind. "Rusty, Rusty." But the forest gave no answer. And for the first time in many weeks, the quiet felt lonely again. The sky was still a deep shade of blue when Lily stirred awake. It was earlier than usual, so early even the birds had not yet begun their morning songs. The house was silent, her blanket was warm, but something, a sound, had tugged her from sleep. She sat up, listening. There it was again, a gentle, muffled sound. A single bark. Lily slipped out of bed and tiptoed downstairs, careful not to wake her parents. As she approached the front door, she heard it once more, a soft paw against the wood, a low, familiar whine. She opened the door. There, sitting on the porch in the bluish dawn light, was Rusty. He was soaked. Mud clung to his fur. Small cuts marked his legs like he'd pushed through thorns or broken fencing. His eyes were tired but alert, and he shivered from the cold. But he sat tall, gaze fixed on Lily, like he had waited all night for her to come. And nestled between his front paws was something strange, something that made Lily's breath catch in her throat. A worn leather dog collar, its buckle rusted, the tag faded but still legible. Etched on it, just barely visible, Max. Attached to the collar by a fragile old ring was a metal, heart-shaped keychain. The enamel was chipped, but beneath the grime the color was unmistakable. A soft, pale pink with gold lettering. Lily bent down slowly, hands trembling. She picked it up and turned it over. The words on the back read, "You'll always find your way back." She knew it. She had seen it before, years ago. "Mom," she called, louder than she meant to. Her mother appeared at the top of the stairs, alarmed, pulling on her robe. Lily held up the collar and keychain with wide eyes. "Mom, is this Max's?" Her mother froze. She descended the steps slowly, reaching out with shaking hands. The moment her fingers touched the collar, her eyes filled with tears. This was his," she whispered. "This is Max's collar, his tag, and this." She turned the heart-shaped keychain over with her thumb. "I lost this after the accident, the day he ran off. I thought it was gone forever." Rusty, number Max, let out a soft huff and stepped forward. He placed his head gently in her hand, the same way he used to years ago, a gesture so familiar it cut through time like a blade through fog. "Oh, my God," she breathed, kneeling down. "It's really you." Lily's father came to the door, confused at first, until he saw his wife crying, one hand on the dog's neck, the other holding the lost tag. Lily reached out and wrapped her arms around Rusty. "Max," she whispered, pressing her face into his damp fur, "you came home." All three of them crouched there on the porch as the sky turned golden, their arms around the dog they thought was lost forever. And Max, the dog who had wandered for 5 long years, who had survived alone, who had been fed by the very child he had once protected as a pup, closed his eyes and let the warmth of home wrap around him once again. No words were needed. His journey was done. The weeks that followed felt like something out of a dream. Max, once Rusty, was home again. His coat began to shine with proper care. His eyes grew brighter. And though a little older and slower than before, his presence was steady, comforting, like a part of the house had come back to life. He followed Lily everywhere, just like he had when she was a toddler, padding softly behind her in the kitchen, lying beside her as she read under the backyard tree, curling at the foot of her bed each night with his nose tucked beneath his tail. One warm evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Lily curled up on the porch beside Max after dinner, a book resting on her chest. Her parents were inside finishing dishes, the hum of a radio drifting through the screen door. The breeze was soft and the night calm. Eventually, Lily fell asleep there, her hand resting gently on Max's back, the porch light glowing faintly above them. But in the quietest hour, just past midnight, Max stirred. His ears perked, his body stiffened. A faint rustling came from the side gate, a sound too deliberate to be the wind. Then a soft creak. The latch lifted. Max rose slowly, muscles tense beneath his fur. He stepped off the porch without a sound, sniffed the air, and then barked. Once. Sharp and sudden, Lily woke with a start. "Max!" From the corner of the yard, a figure froze, clad in dark clothing, hood pulled low. Max snarled, a deep guttural sound, and lunged forward, barking with a force that tore through the stillness of the night. The intruder panicked, stumbled backward, and bolted for the gate, fumbling with the latch before shoving it open and disappearing into the darkness. By the time Lily's parents reached the porch, Lily was holding Max by the collar, her voice shaking but firm. "He scared him away," she said. "There was someone out there. Max saw him before anyone else." The security camera by the driveway had caught the whole thing. The police reviewed the footage later that morning and confirmed a trespasser had tried to enter the yard, and that Max's quick reaction had very likely prevented something far worse. "It was lucky," the officer said. "If your dog hadn't been outside, we don't know what might have happened." But Lily knew it was not luck. Max had done it before. Years ago, when Lily was just 4, still clutching stuffed animals and wobbling through backyard grass, Max had stood between her and a startled stray dog that had leapt over the neighbor's fence. He had barked and growled until it backed off, never letting Lily out of his shadow. And now he had done it again, older, slower, but just as fearless. Later that night, Lily sat beside Max on the porch, her small fingers scratching behind his ear. "You're still my hero," she whispered, "even after all this time." Max rested his head in her lap, his eyes closing with a sigh that sounded a lot like peace. He had found his way back, not just to a house, but to the little girl he had never stopped watching over. The new collar was navy blue, soft and sturdy, with polished silver hardware and a custom-engraved tag that glinted in the sunlight. It read, "Max Max." He came home twice, once as a puppy, once as a guardian. It rested proudly around his neck, as if it had always belonged there. Max was no longer the muddy, gaunt stray that had once waited by the schoolyard fence. He was whole again, brushed, fed, and deeply loved. He had claimed his place back in the family without hesitation, curling up in the same sunny corner of the living room where he used to nap as a pup. The memories returned slowly, the familiar smell of the house, the rhythm of footsteps, the sound of Lily's voice humming as she read aloud. For Lily, It was like finding a piece of her heart she hadn't realized was missing. Her teacher at school had assigned a personal narrative essay. Write about someone who changed your life. Most kids picked grandparents or best friends. Lily wrote about Max. She called it The Dog Who Came Back for Lunch. It was honest, raw, and filled with the kind of quiet, powerful love only a child could put into words. Her teacher cried. Then she submitted it to the statewide Young Writers Competition. A month later, Lily won first place. A local newspaper picked up the story, then a regional outlet. The headline read, "The Lunch That Brought Max Home." The article featured a photo of Lily with Max's head resting on her lap, the new collar gleaming in the light. Below the photo was a pull quote from Lily's essay. "I gave him a sandwich. He gave me everything back." Neighbors who remembered Max from years ago dropped by to see him again. One brought a photo from the day he had first arrived as a pup. Another said, "I never forgot how sweet he was. I'm glad he made it back." And through it all, Max remained humble, watchful, content. His tail wagged at the familiar and the new. His eyes followed Lily wherever she went. At night he curled at her feet with a sigh, as if he knew his journey had ended exactly where it was always meant to. The final scene was nothing extraordinary, and yet it was everything. The sun was setting behind the old maple trees in the backyard. Light poured through the branches in golden ribbons. Lily lay stretched out on a blanket beneath the tree, her head resting on Max's soft belly. Her father sat nearby reading a book. Her mother sipped tea, a blanket draped over her shoulders. No one spoke. They didn't need to. Max shifted slightly, letting out a breath. Lily reached up, pressed her cheek against his fur, and closed her eyes. He was home, and so was she. Thank you for joining us for this heartfelt story of loyalty, love, and the incredible journey of a dog who never stopped finding his way home. Max and Lily's bond is a reminder that even when someone we love seems lost, sometimes they're simply making their way back to us in the most unexpected and beautiful way.